Hey folks, welcome to the fourth week of MuseScore tutorials. This week is going to concentrate on scores. So now the purpose of scores is to provide more than just a single instrument, and we got a taste of that last week with the vocal score, where we had a treble and a bass staff. This week we're going to be looking at a string quartet. I encourage you, before proceeding any further in this video, to downloading the Mozart file that's above. With that file, we're going to be entering a small portion of it as this week's project. And if you follow along with the tutorial, you'll be a little bit ahead of the game and you'll just have to finish the work. All right, so let's go ahead and switch over to MuseScore and get started. I'm just going to adjust a couple things on my screen here. There we go. All right, so this is very standard to all of our typical MuseScore activity. We simply want to make sure that we load a score. Whoops, I didn't expect that activity. Okay, there we go. We want to load a score. We want to fill it with strings. The standard string quartet of the Mozart, violin, second violin, viola, and cello, which they're going to call violoncello on this, which is the long form name of this. This piece is in G major. It's in 3/4, so we're going to edit that number there. It has a tempo marking, but we need to do this differently because it uses a traditional tempo marking of allegro rather than a specific metronome marking. There's no pickup to worry about. It's got this incredibly complicated title. Let me get that title up for myself. I can't see it on my screen at the moment. We'll fix all that in a second. In fact, let me do that now so that you guys can see this more readily. We'll have to do it afterwards. Okay, regardless, hopefully you can see this. If you can't, this is the crazy title up here, and you can just mimic what I have. I have no idea how to even pronounce that, so let's not bother. I'll just make myself look like a fool. And then quartet with 2 T's. Okay, and it is by W.A. Mozart. And the subtitle is Minuetto. There's a little period after it in the designation, so we'll do the same. Okay, so now we can go ahead and say done, and now I bet it will let me move my screen over. There we go. Okay, now we have the visual I wanted you to have. So what we're looking at now is the template for everything, and we're missing an instrument. Let's see. Okay, well, we were missing an instrument, so let's just go back and add it. Looks like I didn't successfully add the cello. So to do this, under Instruments, I can click the Add button, Strings, Bowed, and I want violoncello. Now I'm going to hit OK, and there's the instrument I need. Incidentally, while we're looking at this screen, this is something I was going to show you later in the video, but we're already there, so why not do it now? We have all 4 instruments under the Instruments tab visible. Now, if we wanted to, say, create a score that didn't have the cello part, we simply click the little eyeball icon over here to hide it. The closed eye means it's invisible. It doesn't go away, it just doesn't render it. And we can do that with any combination. So if we just needed a subset of the violin parts or something, like maybe we wanted to provide both violin parts for a single violinist so they could pick and choose what they were doing. Or maybe we wanted them to be able to see their partner's part so they could switch between the roles or whatever. There's a lot of creative uses for this hiding feature. You're inevitably going to stumble on something down the road, so it's good that you're seeing what it is. All right, coming over here, if we scroll all the way down, here we are on page 7. We come to the Minuetto. This is going to be the responsibility this week. You'll be recreating everything from the beginning to this first repeat marking. So if you want a challenge, you're welcome to finish out the piece. It's fairly long. It goes all the way down to here. But that's only if you want a challenge. What I'll be grading officially is from the beginning to the first repeat, all 4 parts. So I'll need to be able to see all 4 of these parts completely done to here in your file. Additionally, I'm going to show you how to access the parts themselves so that down the road you know how to edit individual parts if you need to change layouts or you need to make anything look better. But today's really focuses on the score itself. All right, there's a few items we need to put on here beyond what we already have. First things first, we need a tempo marking. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click at the very beginning. And let's see. Oh, I'm on the wrong screen. Why the heck isn't that working? Every once in a while I get these strange behaviors. Tell you what, I know we can easily enter the tempo marking after we have the first note in. So I'm going to save it for that. So why don't we enter some notes? So I've clicked where I want to start entering notes. Just like always, I'm going to hit N. We're on quarter note, so I'm going to begin entering my notes. They're in the wrong octave, So we just mouse them up, as always, and we can add the slur while we're at it. Next measure, pretty much the same process. You know this part already. In fact, in many senses of the word, I don't really even need to do this for you. But it's going to allow me to show you a couple tricks in a second, so I think it's worth following through. By now, hopefully you've grown pretty accustomed to using all these features. If you're wondering why I entered an A sharp there, I'll get back to that in just a second. Why isn't that note showing up? There we go. The slow draw rate of MuseScore has been one of the more annoying things for me. Notice to create that tie very quickly, I selected the rhythm I wanted. I wanted it to tie to a quarter note, so I selected quarter note advance. When you then hit the tie key, yeah, thank my dog there for adding some extra audio. I hit the tie key and it automatically adds the note I need. She's just making sure that traffic knows its place here and you know, stays away from the house, I guess. Almost done entering the notes. C, A. And hopefully you're starting to see results like this too, where you're able to do things just as quickly as I am. If not, keep practicing. It does continuously get easier. Now let's add in all our slur markings. It looks like somehow I missed the tie there, so I'm going to add in the tie with the T key. Keep going through and adding in my slur markings. And now a quick way to deal with dynamics. This piece uses a lot of back and forth dynamics. You can see that right here. Piano forte, etc. There's a much faster way to do this than to come over here to dynamics and click them in. What I've found is if I click them in first, just a couple of them, so that I have the variations I need, and then I'm just going to copy for Mac Command C, for PC Control C, and then I'm just going to click each note I want the forte on and add those as I go, and they want an extra one there for some reason. And then I'm going to do the same thing again with the piano. So it's just standard copy and paste like you'd use in a word processing software. Nothing fancy, hopefully a nice easy process for you. By doing that, I save myself a lot of time going back and forth clicking this panel over and over again. One of the things about all the software, they all have some variation of a copy and paste, and using that copy and paste I've found to be very helpful. Okay, so we already know all about all this stuff though, and you can see there's quite a bit of entry to do, and it's going to go fast assuming you've got the ability that you know, I've learned now where I can move pretty quickly through this. You'll even see some opportunities for copy and paste. So for instance, after this measure, there's an extra bar, and then that same chromatic line that happened before in violin 1 happens in violin 2. So I could simply select those measures, copy it, and then it happens right about here, and I'm done with those bars already. So look for opportunities like that to save yourself some time and frustration. Let's talk about two things. First thing, you'll notice I used an A sharp here where the score uses a B flat. Now, I'm not going to penalize you for leaving it exactly the way it is in the score. In fact, many folks will probably just do it that way anyways. But the reason we're doing this is because of modern notation conventions. In modern notation, ascending chromatic scales are notated in sharps. Descending chromatic scales are notated in flats. The composer's kind of done that here. Like this I would accept, and the reason I would accept the F sharp here is because it's in the key signature. So we don't really have to introduce extra symbols. But ascending, it's super odd to me that they used a B flat instead of an A sharp, given especially that they used a D sharp here and an E flat here. So they obviously have some form of that convention, but it was very odd to me that they put the B flat here. They do use it consistently. But now think about this. If I put A sharp here, like I did over here, I don't need to cancel the sharp on the next note, so it means less symbols. And also the sharp indicates rising motion chromatically, which is easier on the eyes, it's easier on the interpreter. They now know because of the sharps we're going up. So let me recommend that you get into the habit of always using sharps when rising and flats when descending, unless you're looking at it and there's just no way visually to make it look the way you want. So I'm going to stick with this convention because I not only prefer it, I've had more success with my musicians reading accurately first try with notation like this. All right, so we're almost done with this tutorial, but there's one more thing I want to show you before we go on. Now, if we go up to File and Parts, we get a special menu here. This menu shows us each of the parts that the score has hidden in it. These are each of the parts over here, and every instrument we add has things here. We can also create additional parts that have combinations. So let's say for some odd reason I need a violin 1 and 2 part. I can create a new part and I can make sure that just what I want to see is visible, and it'll add it to my bottom list here. I might call it violin 1 and 2, something like that. In this case though, we're completely content with just the 4 parts we have here. So let me show you an alternate document here. This one has an already completed up to this measure version of this. And so if I then go File, Parts, and Open All, I now have 4 new tabs at the top in addition to the original score. So I have my violin 1 and so on. Each of them is already formatted using the same basic rules. I know it doesn't look like much right now because there's not that much notation. As you finish this, check out the parts later on. They'll fill in. One other thing that's very interesting, let's go back to our violin part. Let's say this note was wrong and we actually needed an E. If I fix that here, I've changed it in the part. Now in old notation software, that would have made a mess. But in current notation software, you'll notice that the E has updated itself in the score. And if I change it in the score, it updates it in the part. So these are what we call linked parts. We have to thank Sibelius for this. Sibelius came up with the idea, and once they linked parts, pretty much every notation software since then has stolen that technique. Finale, MuseScore, they all do this now, and it's a much easier way to work because the parts and the score are now inseparable. There are some ways to break the relationship between the score and the parts. You might do that for something transposing. Like let's say you have a score and you print everything in C, so every single part's in concert, but there's clarinets in there. So clarinets are not a concert instrument. They actually have to read different notes to sound the pitches we're used to from the piano. So in that particular case, you might end up with accidentals that look good on the score but look terrible on the part, in which case you can make changes. But that's just not important today, and it gets beyond the scope of this. All right, hopefully you understand all the basics. What you'll be graded on is that you've entered everything up to this repeat. Again, you're welcome to go further as a challenge and complete it. Note the key change, note all the little interesting markings like a trio strain. All of this is part of the same piece. This is the beginning of the new piece, so that's the end. And you got to enter the repeats and all the different trill markings. There's lots of opportunities here to practice, but the only requirement for the purposes of this project is up to this repeat. All right, I'll be looking forward to seeing your work. I think MuseScore makes this one really easy, so hopefully this isn't an overly time-consuming week for you. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.